I just thought it was cool to type the title across the top of the pediatric education across the continuum. I'd love to know about that continuum because, as I see it, it's all of you, and all the things that we do in our many roles. So I'm going to talk a little bit about academic promotion, a little bit of logistics, and a little bit of strategy. And so let me just get coordinated here. So rather than struggle with the appropriate verbs to use in a slide of learning objectives and potentially be humiliated by those of you who can make better learning objectives than me, I just wrote an outline. It's a little bit general. The first thing I want to do is just to discuss how do we get there? How do we get from here to there? Meaning, how do we get from the work we do every day to academic promotion? There's a lot in between. And as clinician educators, I think we at least need to address this concept of big C, little e versus little c, big E. And we'll get there. I think most of you know what that means, but we're certainly going to describe that in a bit. As I mentioned, we'll do some logistics of promotion and then get to how to build a portfolio. And then as a preview to what Erica is going to present, and I promise you she will present brilliantly on this, we're going to talk just start to hint at strategies for clinician educators in that vein of promotion. So just some big picture thoughts. I'm kind of a visual person, so I tried to create this pictorial. And as Noelle and Erica will vouch for me, if I've said this once, I've said it a million times. Promotion is, and I'm going to insert merely, promotion is merely the byproduct of career development. And that's what getting from here to there is all about. This process of promotion, I can guarantee you, is an irritant. Just thinking about it is an irritant to many of you. It gets in the way of what you want to get done and what you want to get done happily. And that's okay. What I would love for you to do is just visualize this as a partnership with your division director, your mentor circles, the Office of Faculty Development, in prioritizing your career development. So that's what this career planning thing is. And then you're going to have to balance all these things. Noelle will remember from our division meetings, we gave up on balance a long time ago. We're just integrating one thing with the other and trying to make our life work, right? And then finally, if we do that well as clinicians, educators, leaders, investigators, to whatever extent we do in all of this, that's in the Venn diagram, we'll get there. We'll get there to academic promotion. That is, if you want to. If it's not important to you, that's okay. But I'm going to assume that we want to get there. We want to do the things that are going to get us there to promotion, at least for this discussion. So the process really begins with this work, as I alluded to, this work we do every day. So what are we passionate about? What do you love doing? What brings you to work every day? And in particular, for all of us who are educators, clinician educators, what is it about teaching that really turns you on? So there's passions in how we teach, I think, that you can call work. And then promotion is just the byproduct of the work that you do by way of your career development. So in that context, the clinician educator pathway recognizes how you work. So I just use a vocabulary term I want to make sure that you're familiar with. At the School of Medicine, the academic ladder, you ascend that ladder in different pathways. Clinician, and the Venn diagram helps us with that. Clinician educator, clinician leader, clinician investigator, and investigator educator. Those are the four basic pathways. So as clinician educators, it's really this work that is centered around education and you as a teacher that will produce some outcomes. And those outcomes will be the substrate that ends up getting us promoted. So again, the big picture. Promotion is the byproduct of career development. And career development happens when you partner, as I said, with your mentors. Those who sponsor you can get you work to do, whether that's get you into a curriculum build or possibly send you to another institution to speak. That's the kind of partnership that I think you will want to build. And again, Erica will talk about this more. So as you identify and pursue your passions, some of those will differentiate into what we would sort of describe as career themes. And then accomplishments kind of happen because you have a career theme, you're doing things, and you may get that clinical practice guideline built. You may build a curriculum on reading EKGs. And some of those will become contributions to the field, and that's when you begin to see impact. So that's certainly an overused word. So what is, oh my God, sorry, one moment. So what is impact exactly? It's maybe better to think about the outcomes of our work that have an influence or help to build our reputation or change the way we teach. So those are teaching products, innovating. So sorry. Good gravy. Teaching products, innovative techniques or programs, mentee work products, all of those things. And then that impact will translate to what helps you get started on building a national reputation or expanding your sphere of influence. So you want to be able to say in the end, Dr. Pastor, that hypothetical Dr. Pastor has changed the way we teach XYZ. That's really beginning with the end in mind about how we build our career, how we differentiate what we're interested in, and how we move forward to creating outcomes from what we do. Well, since you're all educators at heart, I want to speak to this concept of big C, little e versus little c, big E. And we talk about this in the context of promotion. That's different than the conversation we have about career development. And when we talk about a career as a clinician educator, we often try to dichotomize. Big C, I'm all about clinical work, and I teach like crazy. But I'm a clinician at heart. Shouldn't say but, and I'm a clinician at heart while I teach. Versus little c, biggie, I'm a clinician, I'm a great clinician, but I want to do scholarship in education. And that's what the bottom half of this slide is all about. So outstanding clinician, outstanding teacher. We develop lectures, workshops, local curricula as a big C, little e. Little c, big E, we're an outstanding clinician, and we do scholarship in education, which by definition is creative intellectual work that's validated by peers and disseminated, AKA published, right? And so if you want to just shorten all that, it's really the activity of teaching versus the product of teaching. And we'll come back to this, but I wanted to at least establish that as part of our nomenclature. So before we move on, just a couple of didactic style slides that are related to the logistics of the promotion process. I'll include some detail here so you can reference it later on if you need to, but when you need to, you'll get there. So you prepare a portfolio. In the end, you do all this work, you've made these accomplishments, you feel like you've had impact, you want to go forward, you talk about it with your division director, you have to create this portfolio. And there are several elements to this portfolio: a curriculum vitae, an executive summary, letters of support from your division director and the chair, teaching and research summaries, teaching evaluations, some PDFs of your publications, and a referee table. That's a lot of stuff, but there's a checklist available on the School of Medicine Faculty Affairs website that you can reference. But this is really the process. That's a lot of stuff, as I said, so you need some support, and it's there for you. You're not doing this on your own. This is not something that you feel like you should feel like you have to slog through on your own. You have your division director, you have your mentor circle. There's the School of Medicine Faculty Affairs website. Yeah, that'll give you the checklist, and you can kind of read through what you need to read through. But really, the Office of Faculty Development in the Department of Pediatrics is here for you for this kind of thing, among many other things. But when we get that portfolio together, then we submit it to the Department of Pediatrics. We meet quarterly. If you're using the Office of Faculty Development for review and feedback, we like to start that process about 8 weeks before a quarterly meeting. Doesn't really matter, but we like a lot of lead time. If you're going to work on it with your division directors and your mentors, that's absolutely okay as well. you got to submit the whole portfolio to us about a month beforehand so we can do some brief review and then assign it to some reviewers. And then we get you on the agenda for the Department of Pediatrics Promotions and Appointments Committee meeting. So again, some logistics of what goes on here at home as you build your portfolio. Well, what's next after that? And this is only the second of 2 slides like this, so we'll move on after this. But this is indeed the long and winding road. So here we are at the Department of Pediatrics. You've assembled your portfolio. It goes through the evaluation process, and it's just like submitting a journal article. So it comes to the committee. We have 2 reviewers who report to the rest of the committee, and then I, based on the committee's feedback, prepare a reviewer statement, and it goes back to your division director, and it goes through every item on that promotions portfolio checklist, and it's all meant to better your portfolio. So there may be a couple of iterations, but ultimately it's going to be uploaded to the School of Medicine. It then reaches the School of Medicine, either the tenure stream Faculty Promotions and Appointments Committee or the appointment stream Faculty Promotions and Appointments Committee, and it's reviewed again. We get some feedback, some nitpick stuff. It's a pain in the butt, but we get it polished up, and then they put it to a subcommittee. But they're also waiting for all the letters, the referee letters, to come in, and that takes some time. Ultimately, it's assigned to a subcommittee and then voted upon at that subcommittee. Go to the Med Exec Committee for signature, the Office of the Dean for signature, and ultimately, whether it's appointment or tenure stream, it'll get a signature at the Provost or Chancellor's office. Why is this the long and winding road? Because really, from the time it's approved by the Department of Pediatrics and then uploaded to the School of Medicine to that final signature, that's 12 to 15 months. That is a downer by any measure. But we were promised that they've hired a lot of new staff, that they are a lot more automated in what they're doing. So we're hoping to squeeze that down so that you can see the light at the end of that tunnel. So as I said, those 2 slides are a lot of stuff about the process, and we can revisit that whenever you need to. But I'm more about, as I alluded to in the beginning, the career development that goes into the outcomes that allow you to build the promotion portfolio. So let me just address one question as you anticipate building your promotion portfolio. Is my time and rank a factor for academic promotion? What do you think? Yes or no? Well, here's big news. No, it's not. It's really all about the criteria that the School of Medicine has thought about and tweaked over the years. And you can look them up, and I'm going to help you a little bit with them today. And then when you actually build your portfolio, we'll pay a lot more attention to that. But if you click on that, you'll get this humongous document that's very dense, but it's got all you need to know about the guidelines. But as I said, I'm gonna give you some highlights today.
Hey, Rick, can I interrupt for a sec?
Please.
There was one question before you get onto this part. Is there any set date for the quarterly meetings that happen?
Yes.
That's posted somewhere on the OFD website.
It's Savannah, just make sure I'm saying the right thing. It's on the Department of Pediatrics Promotions Committee Teams site. And they are basically quarterly: March, June, September, and December. And your division director will know those dates because we advertise them 8 times a year, both before and after each meeting.
Thanks.
All right. So with regard to that first promotion from assistant to associate professor, and I know there are some instructors out there and there are some associate professors, but I think the concepts are the same. But in particular, to promotion to associate professor is local, regional, and developing national reputation. So you remember I talked about the passions you have, calling that work, differentiating your career themes, And then the outcomes from the work in those career themes is going to help you develop that reputation, both locally and nationally. So those come in the form of publications, right? So obviously, if you publish something, you're known nationally and internationally. If you're invited to speak, that by definition is getting you known elsewhere. But there are many other criteria. You don't need to meet every criteria by any means. It's more about your body of work, what you've done, how has it led to teaching legions of trainees? How has an innovative program changed how we teach or how we practice medicine, and so on. So that's why you see these other criteria that are representative of the work that you do. In that way, leads to your recognition nationally, and you get membership in professional societies. You serve on editorial boards or as a reviewer. You organize or collaborate on building a conference or a symposia, disseminating your curricula, as I mentioned before, disseminating clinical practice guidelines, QI and safety guidelines, disseminating first to the InfoNet. That's dissemination. Then how does that get disseminated as well? We'll figure that out as we go along. So let's do a little group think, because I think I've been talking for long enough on really how not what. I just told you what is a national reputation, but how do you develop a national reputation? What do you think? Either give me a shout out or give me something in the chat, something that you have done that's led to you being able to say, I'm nationally known for X, Y, or Z. Help your colleagues.
Yeah, so Rick, this is Sonny Sims Lucas. How are you doing today?
Well, thanks, Sonny.
Should probably put my camera on too. I've got light behind me, so it may not be great. But so I just went to my national meeting last week, and I think suggesting symposia topics is a really great way to do it, because then often what will happen is, and what happened to me, they ask you to moderate that session, right? And so that's a really nice way. If you're going to a meeting, you suggest the topic that's of interest to you, and you feel comfortable, suggesting some people to talk at, and then getting involved in that sort of organizational stuff related to meetings.
Yeah, that's really wonderful, Sonny. And I heard a couple of really key phrases, something that's of interest to you. So that's your passion. And then you're going to turn it into work because you were at a meeting, mentioned your idea to somebody who in turn helped you out in your career by saying, hey, why don't we create that? Or why don't I know somebody who will create that with you, and then you guys can present. That's brilliant. Yeah, thank you.
So we have Ellie saying positive or negative reputation, which is funny, in the chat. And for us, presenting at national meetings. So same thing. I think even going to national meetings, because you'll just connect with folks and then wind up doing projects, is a good one. And then a beer, leading a focus group at a national collaboration, leading a workshop at a national meeting. Those are great.
Yeah, awesome. So you got the idea. It's all about disseminating your work. So whether it's a curricula, whether you create a workshop that's local, but then you bring it to the national stage or a regional meeting or something like that, these are things that get you that national reputation. And again, it can be things that we might not necessarily have thought about traditionally, a clinical practice guideline, a safety guideline. And then, as Sonny is implying it, Noel, get yourself invited to speak elsewhere. How do you do that? Well, it takes some assertiveness, but when you're at that meeting, that network can help you. Who's your network? Well, it starts with your division director or your mentor or a colleague who pulls you into a conversation. And then either at that time or by email after the meeting, you suggest that. That's called sponsorship, right? So I learned something about one of you today, and I say, hey, to one of my friends, you need to invite this person to your institution to talk about their level of expertise. So I'm seeing other things, joint committees of national organizations, participating in workshops with facilitators from other institutions. A lot of what you're talking about is building this network, and then suddenly it's amplification of your national reputation. So that's beautiful. Gain membership, and then ultimately leadership role in professional societies, organize or lead those educational workshops, special interest groups, conferences. Yeah, this is how it's done. So I hope even so far we've with some shared groupthink, we I guess that's redundant. With some groupthink, you got the idea that, yeah, I can do that, and your colleagues will help you do that. That's why your mentor circle not only mentors you in areas, but they also sponsor you to go elsewhere, to do things elsewhere. So if we're going to talk about those publications as one of the criteria, though, this is a question that I think we all mull over. How many publications does one need for promotion? Well, it's not an absolute number, although for a clinician educator, a clinician leader, the guidelines will say that you have to have a record of scholarly contributions to knowledge, typically 10 peer-reviewed original publications or publication equivalent scholarly products. So that's this PESP. They count in that number. And although this is not the only criteria, ultimately somebody's counting some beans. And so we like to count those beans too, to make it a non-issue, so that your body of work shows what you've done at the local, regional, and national level. So yeah, to go to associate professor, I'm sorry, it's typically 10. But it's something that I think you can aspire to with less work that you might have anticipated. I can't get 10 articles published. I'm not a writer. I don't do that kind of research. That's okay. Dissemination of your work to a larger audience is what a publication equivalent scholarly product is. So that's building the curriculum for a workshop or a symposia. And so let's talk a little bit more about those. Dissemination of work that's different from traditional peer-reviewed journal articles. Groupthink, what else have you done? What have you done out there that you think will qualify as a publication equivalent scholarly product? So
in the chat,
yeah.
yeah.
Clinical effectiveness guidelines, absolutely. So we build those for a division because there's some clinical issue that we want to address. It gets published ultimately on the InfoNet. That's phase 1, right? And then you bring that to a workshop and teach others about that, teach them the evidence basis of that, let alone if you studied before, your practice before and after. That's at least something you can report, right? What else?
Review articles.
Yeah, so that's not an original hypothesis testing research project, but if you write up a case report with a review, or you're invited, you get one of your colleagues to invite you to collaborate on a review, that's fantastic. Published abstracts. So Ben, thank you. So published abstracts, absolutely. We do small projects here or there that lead to other larger projects. That abstract that you presented at a meeting is a publication equivalent scholarly product if it is indeed published in a journal. So the School of Medicine requires that it has some sort of citation. Oftentimes it's your field's journal that lists the abstracts for a meeting. That's the most common way you get a citation out of that. And unfortunately, not all of the meetings will publish their abstracts. Workshops at national meetings, MedEd portal publications, absolutely. Ellie, can you give us an example of a MedEd portal publication that you managed?
Not yet, but eventually, hopefully, as soon as I get my master's project together and published, and but I'm like, the project that I worked on for my master's was the CDAC, or the critical care de-escalation curriculum. And so trying to just need the time to sit and write that.
I got you. No, I'm glad you gave us what the project was about, because that's not a hypothesis testing study, right? But it's wonderful work. It needs to be disseminated, and when you do that, that is a publication equivalent scholarly work product, because you're gonna publish it where people read about it. Textbook chapters, yes, yeah. So perspective articles. That's Tony. That's in the genre, so to speak, of invited works, invited papers. Yeah, so examples are many, and I think a lot of those of you in the audience have done some of this. Flip classrooms and webinars, right? Thanks, Abir. If you can write that curriculum up and get it disseminated in some way, or get it listed in a meeting agenda, that's part of your body of work that shows how you disseminate your work beyond the local, right? Because we do so much teaching, and we don't always turn that teaching into a work product. So the examples that I have listed: educational program published in MedEd Portal, an educational curricula published in a journal in your field, or as a workshop at a meeting. So, for example, Noel and I and others in pediatric emergency medicine published the outcome of the institution of a milestone-based research curriculum for pediatric emergency medicine, and we demonstrated the before and after of the publication rate of our fellows. We didn't publish that in MedEd Portal. We published it in the journal of our field, because we wanted those in our field to see what we were doing in pediatric emergency medicine for scholarship. So it doesn't always have to be in a medical education journal. Clinical practice guidelines, we've alluded to educational programs such as a new simulation curriculum, something that changes the way we do, the way we teach. All right, so a little bit of the preview I promised you on some strategizing for career development as a clinician educator. And remembering this big C, little e versus little c, big E. Developing your career with a lean one way or the other is all about this activity of teaching versus the product of teaching, as I said before. So if we look at those of us who are big C, little e, so we're outstanding clinicians, and that's part of what we do every day, and that's part of developing our expertise in our field. But we also teach, and we teach a lot, but we may not do the scholarship of teaching. So tell me some of what you have done in that regard specifically. Well, we probably already covered this, right? We turn our lecture and the lectures that we do into a workshop curriculum. We publish in MedEd Portal, practice guidelines. Anything on the web is still a publication. Peer-reviewed published abstracts, as we said, educational programs. Now, that's a little different than the lean towards scholarship in education, which is this, quote, unique form of teaching or education that results in peer-reviewed original publications. And they have to meet those sort of criteria: disseminated, peer-reviewed, and able to be applied by and built upon by others. So this, I think we should spend a little time doing some group think as well. We've covered a lot of the publication equivalent scholarship that we do, but what is this creative intellectual work that's validated by peers? Has anyone done scholarship in education? What was it like? Was it hard? Where did you publish?
You're looking for people to volunteer here?
Sure, Tony, go for it.
So John Smuziak and I published on the podcast, PHM from Pittsburgh. We did a study. I'm assuming that's meeting the guidelines of what you're asking. If not, stop me.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. We did a survey study where we looked at who was listening and why. And then we did a qualitative and quantitative approach. We published it, I believe, in I think Hospital Pediatrics. There've been, and then since then there have been a couple other articles, but that's That's how we went about it. Am I answering the question you're asking, or am I just talking for no reason, Rick?
No, absolutely. So first of all, you had a work product that was disseminated. So you had this podcast. That in and of itself is a publication equivalent scholarly product because it was disseminated, right? And you can list that as X number of podcasts with X number of, what are they? They're not listeners. What are they? They're downloads, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there you have a quantifiable outcome. Then you took what you were passionate about and you turned it into a scholarly project where you surveyed for why people were listening, right? And you reported that in a journal. You could have reported that in a sort of a med ed journal, right? And you guys know more about those med ed journals than I do. Or you could publish it in the journal of your field because you knew you wanted to get your message to those in hospital medicine. So that's sort of almost a three-pronged approach to turning your passion into work and then finally into scholarship.
All right, there you go. Thanks.
And so I suggest, Tony, that you read Rhett's personal message to you. Ellie, let me get back to this. Can you talk a little bit about how oral presentations are considered in comparison to abstracts? Ellie, I'm going to just tell you how I think about it, I'd like feedback from the group. So the way I see this abstract thing is, I do something. It's some sort of work, whether it's a study in the lab, a clinical study, an educational project, and I submit it to a meeting. And it's chosen for oral versus or platform versus poster presentation. I would emphasize to you that it makes no difference whether it's platform or poster presentation. Some people think that it's more cachet to say, well, this was an oral presentation. Doesn't really matter. It got disseminated. That's the bottom line.
Rick,
And
does it matter if it's published abstract? Because I came
yeah,
across that recently.
yeah.
And a
So I
lot
think
of
that's
in our field that they stopped publishing the abstracts. So
right. So it depends on the meeting. So the PAS meeting used to publish for SPR. SPR used to publish the abstracts that were to be presented, whether it was a platform or a poster, in pediatric research. The April journal was dedicated to that. They stopped doing that in the late 90s or 2000s. And so we no longer have those citations. That's a really big bummer, but there are plenty of meetings that still have field-specific journals that will list the abstracts that were accepted for presentation. So Ellie, in terms of oral presentations versus not, in comparison to an abstract, I think the abstract is either what got, I'm sorry, not either, but the abstract is what you submitted to a meeting that was either accepted or not for presentation. In order to have the bean counters counted as a publication, it has to have a citation in a journal. If it's not, the CV format has another section for abstracts not published. You can list there where you presented, but it's just listed in the section that it was not published in the scientific journal. Does that help? That was probably a little bit meandering.
And then there's a question, Abir, and I think the answer is yes, but would the That's Pediatrics podcast then count if you present on that?
Yes, I mean, it's a quantifiable dissemination of your work. And the way that the School of Medicine asks you to do that, I'll have to look at the guideline or the CV format that's posted to know exactly, but I'm quite sure they want, the title, the date range, and then how many downloads or whatever other quantifiable measure of the dissemination. It's just like when you create your teaching table and you say, I taught this course to these learners this many times per year, this number of learners. They sort of want they want the quantity of teaching that you're doing.
So I think these questions all kind of fall together. Tony then asks, what about the expert guest on podcasts? How does being an expert guest being asked to talk about a topic count?
I love these questions because sometimes they're the first ever presented to me, or there's no spot allocated right now on the CV. That's when we, as the Office of Faculty Development and others, will make something up. We'll make a little subsection that says invited, as part of your invited speakerships, or you might make a subsection of local, regional, national, and international, but you might tag on one that says multimedia invited speakerships, and you list the podcast you were asked to speak on. That's how I would do it.
That's a good idea.
Whatever we can get on the CV as a quantifiable work product, we're gonna do it.
And Red says, I think presenting at a workshop nationally as the teacher should be reflective as contributing to it being a national expert.
I'm with you, Red. I'm with you.
Tony has his hand up.
Tony, go.
I'm sorry to keep bugging this topic. I get this
No.
question a lot when I have guests on the show.
Yeah.
If you're asked to be on a podcast or NPR or Media for TV, does that count the same? Do you think it would count the same as like oral presentation and abstract? Like, people kind of always ask me, how does this count? And then where should I put it? And I tell them where they should put it, but they ask, how does it count? And I don't know the answer.
Okay, well, I've been wrong before when I answer these questions, but I think I'm right on this. I don't think it counts as a publication. It counts in the body of your work and a representation of your reputation. That may be local, maybe regional, maybe national, but it doesn't count as a publication. At some point, you want to make sure that you're not putting things on your CV that someone would look askance at, that they would call fluff. So if you were quoted in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and that I wouldn't list that. To be clear, it's not a publication. It's not a podcast. It's just different. So did I speak to that, Tony?
I think so. Erica has her hand up too. Oh, go ahead, Tony.
Erica, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to pause for a second just to highlight, to make sure you're using the most up-to-date PIT CV. Joe Losi has worked to help answer many of these questions. And so there's a media section. So invited media would go under invited lectures and seminars, actually, which is in the research section. And they are working to come up with more fine-tuned recommendations around social media. So I think that should be out in the next 6 to 12 months. So I just wanted to put that plug out there. The most recent CV was this July, and I can put the link in the chat.
Great.
And then
thanks.
One other thing I wanted to backtrack and like sort of how I was, how Dina helped me think about public, like posters and abstracts, is the amount of people that it's disseminated to. So a poster presentation, 10 people might see your poster. An oral abstract presentation, maybe tens to 100 could be, that information's disseminated to. A published abstract, so one that goes in a journal, reaches the people that weren't even attending that conference, and then a paper is even more broad. So there is some way that the School of Medicine looks critically at non-published abstracts, published abstracts, oral abstracts, manuscripts, and that's sort of why they break it down that way, because it speaks to how many people that work has touched.
Yeah, thanks, Erica. That is, those are important distinctions, and I really appreciate you bringing those to the table. If I'm going to flip that around, though, in terms of our own egos, there is no difference for me whether your presentation is a platform or a poster. It was peer reviewed and accepted for presentation. You're absolutely right. The audience that it reaches may be different, although you could say that the people who knows how many people see a poster. Those who walk by may read your title and get back with you at a later date. So I'm hesitant to rank those sorts of acceptances, particularly how they reflect on you personally. Congratulations, no matter where and when you have your abstracts accepted. But as Erica says, the CV is getting more and more finessed as to how we can load in the things that we do, and this is all good. The media section, yes, is being developed. And Erica, did you say that it's not, the current version doesn't include the detail to which you alluded to regarding media?
The current version has, I believe, definitely has area for media, and I believe has area for podcasts. And upcoming versions will have really great ways to speak to them as scholarly work. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, fantastic. This is all good. It helps. I think it helps us know that the School of Medicine is looking for ways to help us show the work we do as work that has an influence somewhere, right? And there's so many ways that this was not recognized in the past. So that really brings me to the end. I'd love to continue the discussion of hearing any of your other thoughts, but it's really finishing where we started, and that is that career development takes some time. It takes integrating both your clinical work with everything else you do in this Venn diagram, identifying your passions, turning your passions into things that you do at work, calling it your work. And then some of that turns into outcomes that are disseminated. And that's where there's the crossover between developing your career and, by the way, getting promoted on the academic ladder. So thanks a ton for all the input. Whatever conversation we still can have, I'm absolutely open.